King, and I'm a painter. I paint with all kinds of materials: watercolor, gouache, acrylic, flash acrylic, sometimes oil, sometimes mixed media. I see it, I want to paint it, I love to paint. I graduated from Goucher College, just outside of Baltimore, Maryland, with a painting degree and an arts administration degree. Moved to DC and worked in the nonprofit arts sector for a decade, supporting other artists. So I did do some curating, I did membership, I hung the actual shows, I did PR, I did press releases, and in those days, you printed them out, you folded them up, you put them in envelopes, and you mailed them. There was no internet. I engaged with artists a lot in the area, and I loved that, but I put my own art on a shelf. I always made something here and there along the way. Then my husband and I had kids, and we were really involved in raising them, and we also started a lawn care business locally. More than 20 years old now, we've been doing that. So I really got involved with everything about my own art. On the side, I would have a sketchbook, or we'd go on vacation and I'd do some painting. I do art with the kids, I do art at school with kids. But my own art really took a back seat. When I first started painting, things were delineated. If you did an acrylic painting, it was all in acrylic. If you did an oil painting, it was all in oil. If you did watercolor, there were pretty strict rules about how you could use that, at least in school. What's drawn me to creating with mixed media is the freedom to solve problems. I think when you're making art, everything from beginning to end is about solving a problem. The problems might be obvious, like how to construct the piece, what the composition is, the color choices, swatching colors, what the process might be. But in the end, it's a whole little series of problems that have to be solved, and some of those are intuitive too. So I guess I'm drawn to that process, but also combining all of these materials to try to solve the problem. If I can't get something quite right with the acrylic, but I know I can come in with some chalk or some pencil or whatever it is, then I'm going to use that material. And that's been kind of an arc for me in learning how to use materials. Sometimes pieces come quickly, and especially if they're smaller, obviously. Watercolor, there's something called direct painting, when you just go for it instead of creating sketches and color swatches and underpaintings and all of that. Direct painting is when you just go for it. So sometimes I do that, and it's a very quick process. And some other paintings take weeks and weeks, months maybe, if I am going through a more architectural process to get to the end point. To break a creative block, I think, is one of the hardest things any artist has to deal with. I bet if you asked 100 artists, they'd all say, oh, I have these processes I use to try to create and try to break blocks, but they don't always work. So what do? Sometimes I just switch it up, put that piece aside, start working on something else. Sometimes I paint over the whole thing and start over again. Sometimes I go to YouTube University and watch other artists and what they're doing and how they've solved their problems, and If they're using new materials or processes that I can pull from, it's a wonderful resource. Sometimes I walk away, go outside, take a walk. Sometimes I stew in it for a long time. I imagine other artists would also say this. They spend so much time in their heads. I spend a lot of time in my head. And so when I can break through that and just do something, just put some paint on the canvas in a different way, in retrospect, very often, I'm like, that wasn't so bad. That wasn't such a big problem. But making art is a very, I don't want to say lonely, because I love that solitude. In the end, I think I'm an introvert, and working in that space, it's a wonderful place to be, but also when you're aggravated about the piece of work that you can't seem to break through, at least I don't have an office where I can sort of wander out and run some ideas by 4 other people or just take a break. So anyway, I think that it's an interesting universe we artists spend our time in, most of our time in. My creative space, I'm grateful for it, is a bedroom in my home. My kids are grown and on their own now, and so I invaded a space, and it's wonderful. It is filled, because it's not a huge room, chock full of my art and my materials and books I like to refer to, some of the books I've had since college. Also, there's a bathroom so I can wash my brushes. That's handy. Don't have to cart them somewhere else to get that done. So what does it look like? It's fairly orderly, because I like to know where my materials are and get to them when I want to get to them. And also it needs to be that way because I switch back and forth between mediums. With watercolor, generally I'm painting flat or slightly tilted, and then with larger canvases, in acrylic usually, obviously I'm on an easel and it's further up. So I have carts, my acrylics and my oils in one cart, and drawers of watercolors, all discarded furniture. Although I did treat myself last year to a table that, it's a standing desk, but it doesn't have to be. I can adjust it. So anyway, that is a dream to work on. Just a dream, because I can adjust it wherever I need it for whatever I'm doing. So I did treat myself to that, but mostly the other things are discarded desks and carts and pieces of furniture that nobody else needed, and I love it. And my art's all over the place and in drawers. A lot of inventory. I think that sometimes the surroundings limit you. So you think, oh, I don't have any space. When I first started making art again, I was in a corner of our bedroom with this desk, and the desk was it. So I say to anyone who thinks, I don't have space, just make space. Do it on the kitchen table. Get a plastic tote and gather your things and put them in the tote and carry the tote around. That is now your studio. Call yourself an artist, because if you're making art, you're an artist. Call yourself an artist, make your art, it will grow. Pretty soon you'll go from tote to kitchen table, and then you'll, take over a bedroom in your house. But you deserve to have that space to make the things that you want to make. So just do it. These eyes, this is the way I've seen the world. 60 years, I'm 60 years old. Everywhere I go, I see something I want to paint. It might be, and there's beauty in everything. A rusty fence, I love rust. Long shadows across a street just catch my eye. Pat, we all look at the sky, we look at clouds, we see things in the clouds. I think I see things everywhere like that and want to paint them. I am no photographer, but with my phone, I'm always stopping to take a picture of the little corner of the fence as it crosses the tree behind the blah, blah, whatever it is, the shadows and the colors. And so I have a phone and a cloud filled with shots of things that I might use as reference and may never use. But that is the way I walk through the world. And I think we all do that to a certain degree. Whether we acknowledge it or not, or we know that about ourselves or not, is another story. But hey, you know what? If we all could allow ourselves to be creative, alone and together, I believe we could solve a lot of problems in this world. And art is not separate from humanity. Art is intrinsic to humanity. So why not try? There's an artist named Ai Weiwei, Chinese man, contemporary artist. He has said, I'm paraphrasing, art is life, life is art. I do not separate them. Well, yes. I think that's true for all of us. I am compelled to make art. I am compelled to make art that evokes a sense of peace and calm in this crazy world. So if someone wants a little piece of that, I want them to be able to access it easily. But that's also propelled me finally to put my art out in the world in a gallery space and come out of hiding and talk about it some. It means a lot to me. That's the way I respond to the world, and I really would love it if someone in this gallery or anywhere else walked by my piece and just kind of took a breath and maybe recognized something in that piece. Maybe it gives solace, or it reminds the viewer of a place or time. That familiarity, I think, is a huge part of why art even exists, so we can share with each other through nonverbal communication. I think all artists really are responding to the world when they're making their work, and some people have very radical things to say, and that's beautiful. Some people have very complex things to say through their art. That's beautiful. Maybe mine's a little complex, but mostly I think it's about that feeling. It's what I put into it that I would like a viewer, a buyer, a kid, anyone to sort of just get some of that feeling back. It's a bit of a gift, maybe. My advice is just start. And if you are questioning yourself and saying, I'm no good, if you have imposter syndrome, stop it. That just gets in the way of making things. Whatever you want to make, just make it. I think our human nature is that we need to create. So create, whatever that is. Decorate cakes, make paintings, do films, dance, whatever it is. Don't let that part of you take a back seat. It's so true about all of us. So many people say, oh, I can't draw a stick figure, or I wish I had time for that. Or I've never been creative. You know, my sister was the creative one. Whatever it is, stop it. We're all creative. And my creative doesn't have to look like your creative, right? Because what would the point of that be anyway? So just do it, just make it, whatever it is.